Coming up on The Returned.
The car crashed and I went flying through the windshield. I got stuck up in the air. I was going to die. I cried out, God, please help me. My body hit the ground, but my soul flew off with an angel to the other side. He did that sternal knuckle press. My soul came back in through my eye.
Hi, and welcome to The Returned. Here's to everything we'll discover together. Hi, and welcome to The Returned. We have a very special guest, Nicole Angelique Kerr. She is a disabled Air Force veteran, a certified neuro-emotional technique practitioner, a respected wellness professional, and a near-death survivor. At just the age 19, she was pronounced dead after a tragic car accident. Her extraordinary journey since then has shaped her understanding of life, healing, and the beauty that can exist even in our deepest challenges. Nicole, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your insights.
Oh, thank you. What a beautiful introduction, MJ. I'm delighted and grateful to be on
You're
your show and hope I can be of service to others by speaking my truth and my experience.
Oh, you're welcome. Nicole, before we jump right in, can you give us a brief idea of who you were before your profound experience?
Absolutely. And, it's really, when I think about who I was before, because I'm a completely different person than I was uh, after age 19 when the near death experience happened. But I grew up in the South, Jackson, Mississippi, during the late 60s and 70s. So during a time where the South is very, very religious. Our parents took us to the Lutheran church and to the Southern Baptist church. So we were heavily indoctrinated with Christianity and that God was loving, but if you didn't follow these rules, bad things were going to happen and you were going to hell. So this dual God, meaning he was good, but he was also punitive and judgmental. So you wind up with a lot of fear running your operating system in your body when you have that belief system. I also grew up with a father who was military. He had gone to the Air Force Academy, which incidentally is where I went and where the crash happened. He then transferred to the Marine Corps and flew helicopters during the Bay of Pigs. So very rigid and controlling household. The Bible talks about the 10 Commandments and you have to follow them. Well, my dad had his own 10 Commandments and we had to follow them, including not spending the night with others because nothing productive ever came out of not sleeping and then just being a little brat the next day. So he wouldn't even let us do that. So we knew if we got in trouble, we were going to be punished, and we knew where he stood on everything. So he knew what was best for us. So we really didn't get the chance as youngsters to individuate and get on our own path. He directed the path that he thought was the best for us, and we just followed blindly. So that was the environment that I grew up in. My family also had a family business. It was a lawnmower business, the Yazoo lawnmowers. And so I grew up in a business where during the summers, on summer vacations, we worked in the business from a very young age, and then as we got older, we would be at the reception desk. So we always, it seemed like our life rotated around living at Yazoo when we weren't in school and doing extracurricular activities. I took ballet. I loved ballet. Then I got too tall for it. I'm now 5'11", so you go on point. There's no guys that are, 6'1" and 6'2" to be your partner with. So, I did get to do some wonderful things like that. But by and large, I grew up in a very protected, sheltered environment. I never had a date. My dad didn't believe in dating, so I never went to the prom or did anything like that. And then all of a sudden I go to school where there's 4,000 guys and I'm told not to date any of them, right? Okay, that was one of his rules, and no smoking and no drinking. So you can kind of get the picture of my life and needing to please my parents. That was a really big
Mhm.
belief system that if I pleased them, good things would happen to me. So at some level, we actually design the type of parents and siblings that we're going to be around and to interact with so that we can learn the lessons that we signed up to learn during this incarnation of our soul, which is something I never believed in the religious theology. They didn't even believe in that reincarnation of your soul or learning lessons and all that. That's been my life path and my spiritual transformative journey since the NDE, which got me away from the church theology. And I would like to tell people, a lot of what I have been through the last 42 years has been trauma recovery. And I don't think that
Mm.
people really understand when you go through an NDE and have a traumatic experience, it's not only recovering from the trauma of the NDE, but it's also the trauma when you start implementing these and going developing new belief systems that go against what your family of origin believes, because then you have to deal with the fallout of not being accepted, not being loved, understanding there was conditional love in the relationships.
Mhm.
So you really start feeling, for me, to feel is to heal. And you start feeling all of these emotions and start realizing, oh my gosh, I really had myself tight like this, contained,
Mhm.
and once all that started opening up, you have to start dealing with the fallout. So, and my parents never believed in mental health. And unfortunately, when you go through a trauma, you actually do need to address your mental health. So I'm a huge mental health proponent and advocate because when I was in the hospital for 4 months, when I got released, the doctor said to my parents, Nicole is going to need psychological and psychiatric help. She's been through a massive physical trauma, but also mentally. And my mother looked at the doctor, and I'll never forget this, MJ. She said, Jesus is our psychiatrist, and she's going to be just fine. Well, guess
Oh.
what? Within a year of the accident, I went to live with my sister and I developed an eating disorder. I didn't know what it was back in the 80s, but it was back then called compulsive overeating. Today it's known as binge eating disorder. So I
Yeah.
dealt with that for 20 years until my memory came back. When my memory came back, the eating disorder healed up. So I talk a lot about this in the book in terms of trauma and repressed memories and my journey of healing, which is what we are all on. Whether you want to believe that or not, we're all here on a healing journey. It keeps evolving and you keep understanding the next layer you go to. And it's undoing all these layers to come back to who you really are as a soul, which is someone who is perfect, who is beautiful, who is radiant, and most of all, eternal. Your soul does live on. So there's nothing to fix. But we forget that when we come in at birth and we get something called spiritual amnesia. We forget who we really are. And so getting back to who we really are is a lot of the work that we are actually doing here on earth is to get to that place. And in essence, that's coming to understand what it is and to practice loving who you are, truly loving with no judgment, the unconditional love that you want from others. You have to learn to give that to yourself.
Having said that, can we move in and hear all about this profound experience,
Yes,
please?
absolutely. So when I was 19 years old, I started my second year at the United States Air Force Academy. And this is in 1983 when women had just recently been admitted. So very still hostile environment
Mm.
of men toward women. They really didn't think we belonged there. So a lot of abuse actually was going on, mental, physical, spiritual, and
Mm.
sexual abuse. And I knew from day one, the previous year when I went to boot camp, my soul knew I was in the wrong place. But I don't know about you, MJ, when you come from a controlling household, failure and fear are not options. If you start something, you have to finish it. That was, and if you go through all of this arduous process to get into one of the service academies, by God, you're going to stay there unless you get kicked out, So the fear of saying and voicing that this isn't for me. I don't want to go here. I don't belong here. I don't want to learn how to kill other people. That's not what I want to do. I couldn't do that. So my soul was like, you're on the wrong path, dear. And it started my sophomore year. I knew I was getting in deeper because the classes got more advanced, they got harder. And I just thought, I'm going to fail out of here. I just can't keep this kind of pressure on myself to be doing the military training, the physical training, all the academic, the rigor. It was piling on me. And so, what got me out of it was a horrific accident, because my soul was indeed on the wrong path. And it was this car crash. And you can see that's a
Oh my
1965.
goodness.
That's the passenger side, which I was in that seat. It was a Corvette convertible. Yeah. And I
Oh my.
was another cadet, a senior cadet was driving. Turned out, I didn't know this, but it turned out he was drunk. I later found out. And we were at a mandatory squadron event, and I was getting a ride back to the Air Force Academy with him. And he crashed the vehicle. We were both ejected. It didn't have seat belts. This was back 65 model, so they didn't even require them back then. And the car flipped over and landed on its top, and we both were thrown out. I was thrown into a ditch, um, and was pronounced dead. There was a group of bystanders in a home that heard the crash. They came out. It was on a Sunday evening, and they checked me, could not get any kind of pulse or any sign of life on me. So they went in and got a blanket and covered me up and called 911. So it was around 10 to 13 minutes later that the first responders got there. The driver, he was okay. He was lucid. He was drunk, of course, had minimal injuries to his back. But they had covered me up. And so when the first responders got there, I now know, I call him one of my angels because I do believe in angels and they come in many forms. And John Hartling was one of the volunteer paramedics with the Tri-Lakes Community Volunteer Department. And he undid the blanket, and all the people are standing around, and he's like, stand back. And they're like, she's dead. She's expired. There's nothing you can do. And he said, you're not going to tell me what to do. He was a former Navy SEAL. And thank God he was like that, because he started working me, could not get any sign of life. And the only thing that got his attention was doing what they call a sternal knuckle press. And if you're in healthcare, you probably know what that is. It's designed to elicit pain in the body. So what happened was my right pupil, it flinched, it dilated. Now, think about that. Of all the signs of life that you can get in a body, he could not get a pulse. He could not get anything except this eye dilating when he did that. So he knew I was still alive. And what is so cool, you know that saying, our eyes are the window to our soul?
Absolutely.
Okay, this
Yes.
is what is really cool. We say that for a reason. We have these sayings because they're true at some level. So when the car crashed and I remembered 20 years later, remembered flying through the windshield, I got stuck up in the air and I knew I was going to die. I cried out and said, oh my God, please help me. And then I went and my body hit the ground, but my soul flew off with an angel to the other side, what we know as heaven or whatever you want to call it. So when he did that sternal knuckle press, my soul came back in through my eye. That's how that happened. And then after that, he was able to get a blood pressure reading on me of 60 over 0. So if you know anything about blood pressure, that's still in and out of death, 60 over 0, okay? I had...
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was like...
I think anybody would know that.
Yeah, so it's not good for me, okay? So they got these mask pants on me that
man.
pushed all the blood up to my organs. They got me into the ambulance. My foot was detached, so they picked that up and put that on the gurney. They got me to the nearest community hospital. They had no idea I was even a cadet. And the team of doctors that was on call that night, this is so cool too, because it was the first woman surgeon in Colorado Springs, Dr. Rothammer. She was on call. She's a thoracic surgeon, first female medical student at Jefferson College in Philadelphia. She's a maverick. And she stayed with me my whole journey, 4 months. And I tell you, she saw me in and out of death, and she is a near-death convinced doctor now based on my
Oh,
multiple
wow.
episodes of going in and out and always seeming to come back, not because she did something heroic, because something bigger than myself came in and got my heart going
Mhm.
again. So off to the hospital I went. I had so much, when you have a car crash like that, I had so many open wounds and fractures, lacerations, all that gravel and dirt, feces, it all got into my system and I developed
Mhm.
sepsis. I developed gangrene. I was on a roller coaster for the next 4 months of in and out of death. I had another near death experience on the operating table where I coded when they were doing emergency surgery. I just left because the pain was so great. And I had remembered at some level, the only thing I remembered when I woke up in the ICU were these bright white lights. And that is the most common um, experience that near death experiencers seem to have. Is we all seem to have some version of this clear bright white. It's not blinding, it's not like a deer in the headlights, but it's like a light that just cocooned me, and I almost felt like an astronaut floating in outer space. It was so warm and love. I think
Mm.
that's what I really felt, enveloped in this light of love. No pain, no suffering, no nothing. And to me, that's what the essence of God now is. That's now my concept of God. Is love is just not an emotion, it's also an energy. And that's what I felt with that light, was that energy
Mhm.
of love. So that was the only memory I had for 19 years. And I asked the surgeon, I said, was that the operating room light? Did I come conscious at some point during the surgery? And she said, no, Nicole, you were out. You were unconscious for 12 hours. And she said, no, it's something mystical. It's something magical. It's something greater than what we know that you experienced. And so that's when my memory came back 19 years later. And I now know, I've talked to so many people that have had NDEs. When you have a tragedy like this, your soul leaves before impact. So I want to tell all those viewers out there, if you've had a loved one or someone that you knew that was killed in a horrific car crash or some kind of tragic circumstance, they did not feel the pain. Their soul,
Uh-huh.
your soul knows to leave before the impact. And that's
Mhm.
what happened when I flew out of the car. My soul left before I hit the ground because I could see, I knew, yeah, I knew
Yeah.
when I hit the ground I was going to die. But to this day, I have never felt that. Thank God. My entire adult life has been about managing my
Mm.
health, and it's taken me on a whole different trajectory than I thought my
Mm.
life was going to be. So, absolutely no pain when you're in something like that. Now, I know a lot of people, if they get a terminal diagnosis, that they have pain going through, their stages of treatments or whatever. That's not the same thing as this. And that's what I want to differentiate, that um, just for those that do have something horrific, something happens just like that, they do not
Mhm.
and they did not feel the pain.
Okay, so what happened next? You forgot all about it,
I went on
and
with
then
life.
2 decades later, it came crashing back to you, should I say?
Well, it's interesting because there's something called repressed memories that our bodies hold. And I did
Mhm.
not even know that was a thing until I was working at the Centers for Disease Control. And I went to Starbucks to get my usual coffee. And all of a sudden, I had this flashback, and I could see me sitting in the Corvette with one foot on the dashboard, the other one crossed over. And all of a sudden, it unfolded like a movie. MJ, I could have I sat back and I
Mhm.
watched it, and I watched myself. I watched what he did. He tried to make a sexual pass at me, and I said no. He got very angry and turned the wheel of the Corvette. It fishtailed, spun out, hit this huge boulder, and flipped us. So that's actually what caused it, which set me up for not being able to have a relationship until I could remember this, because I was afraid of men's anger. If I did something to men and they got angry at me, unconsciously, my brain would interpret that I could possibly be killed. So please, guys, was the message I learned. And I didn't wind up getting married till
Oh.
40 years old, which was 2 years after my memory came back, because then I could understand what I was doing. It was a coping mechanism, unhealthy, but it was still a coping mechanism. I'd been doing all kinds of work to try to help me from a emotional and mental perspective, but I couldn't seem to get past the dating thing and intimacy and things like that, um, until this memory came back, and it made complete sense to me. And then it only took me dating one guy, and now I have my husband who I've been with 21 years, and I'm just like, he's the love of my life. He's the perfect person and soulmate for me. So they do show up. Okay. I want to tell other women out there. I mean, I was 40 and that's my first marriage and I'm not having another one, but, they are out there, these wonderful souls. Yeah, that was a gift that I got out of that. But the memory started coming back, and I went to my body healer and chiropractor, and I said, I didn't go to work. I said, please tell me what's going on. He said, Nicole, these are repressed memories. Your body finally feels safe enough for it to come up and you can process it. And I think with trauma, a lot of us black out the memory because it is so traumatic. And especially sexual abuse and things like that, another way to cope is that there's no memory of it. And then when it does start coming back, you start doubting yourself because we are a doubtful society. What do you mean your memory's coming back 19 years later? How can you trust that? How do you not know you're making that up? And that's a lot of what got put on me when my memory came back. And we have to work through those issues and just go, no, there's no way I can make up this story, MJ. There's just no way, and to really believe that and align with it in my core, no matter who is saying what about it. And so I had to learn to work through what I found on the other side, which was an angel picked me up and took me to the other side. And over on the other side, you guys, we don't communicate like we do here. You communicate through telepathy and vibration. They're not speaking English over there, okay? But somehow you can translate that into English when you come back. It's really cool. And there are colors on the other side, more than in that Crayola color box, the big one that you get to go back to school, They're colors that you can't even imagine. And it's so interesting because I started wearing bright colors when my memory came back. My whole wardrobe changed, and I love color now. I put it on my walls. I dress in color. I mean, black and neutrals, you don't find that in my wardrobe. And so I now know that that's part of my experience of the color on the other side is it just envelopes you and becomes, like a rainbow in you. So I also want to tell people, your eyes can, if you look out, you probably can see 40 degrees in each direction. On the other side, you don't have eyes like we have, but you do have eyes. You can see 360 and in the future all at one time, which is really cool.
Wow.
So, you can hear music. You can take your 7 top favorite music songs and think about if you synthesized them and blended them all together, what that would sound like. It would raise your vibration so high because these are your favorite notes and the resonance that you would feel with that. That's kind of like what you feel over there. And when I was over there, I got the message from this angel. First of all, the angel said, we have to ask them for help. Okay. Here on earth, we have to ask them to help us because we have something called free will. Okay, so every single one of us can make a choice and a decision. So the angels are not going to interfere with our choices unless we ask them for help. So start developing a relationship with your angel, and every single one of us come in to this earth with at least one birth angel or guardian angel, whatever you want to call it. I personally have 2, but you at least have 1. So start trying to develop that relationship with that angel, just like you would any other relationship. Start talking, at night. Ask, what is it that I need to know about you? Please send me a sign. And then you've got to be open. You have to suspend your disbelief that anything's going to happen and start looking for ways that they can interact with you. They can move energy so you can see lights going on and off. You may see coins or something shifts in the house. They work in all kinds of ways. So start that conversation with them, and you will. And I tell people, I ask for parking spaces. I know that sounds crazy to people. Why would you bother an angel about a parking space? Well, I need a parking space, and it's evidence that they're hearing me and that they show up for me. And our human part needs that evidence to know that they are there and they're working on our behalf. And the other part of this is I do believe in prayer, because prayer is a focused form of energy. So that is
Mhm.
important. But also suspend how you think an outcome needs to look. So if you're praying for somebody that they live through a horrible disease because you want them there, maybe that's not for their highest and greatest good. So I usually pray in those
Mhm.
circumstances for their highest and greatest good to be done, because I don't know necessarily what that is. So on the other side, I didn't want to come back. Okay. I could see my body. I could see how mangled it was. Why in the world would I want to get back in a body that's going to be physically impaired for the rest of my earthly life? Mentally, I'm going to have to go
Right.
back I was basically an infant again. I couldn't go to the bathroom. I had to have a colostomy done. I mean, I was you know, I couldn't eat by myself. I'd broken my wrist and my foot. I mean, I was just so banged up and messed up that I basically went back to infancy. And so went back home to Mississippi to recuperate. I got a medical discharge from the Air Force, but I went right back into that same setting I grew up in. And so that was
Mm.
hard for me. It really was, because
Uh,
my parents was taking me back to church, and I just knew something didn't resonate in church anymore. And I spent those 19 years that my memory didn't come back. I think, MJ, I hit every denomination there is. I went to the Mormon church. I went to the Buddhist temple. I went to every Protestant church. I went to Cal. I tried them all, trying to connect with what I something was feeling in me. And now I know what that is. Today, I tell people go to church at the beach or church in nature, and they go, "Where's that?" I'm like, just right outdoor or on the beach or whatever. I lived in Hawaii for almost 20 years. I'd go out and walk the beach, and that was so meditative and soothing. And I could just feel the presence of the creator, um, and just that energy. And to me, that's what it's about, is aligning and feeling that and connecting with that. So that was kind of my experience on the other side in a nutshell. But to have to come back knowing this and knowing that my family really believed, and still does, that that you have to get to God through an external mechanism like Jesus. And I'm like, no, God is within
Mm.
us. And they don't believe that. They don't believe me. They
Mhm.
still think you have to
Mhm.
believe that Jesus is your Lord and Savior. That whole uh, and that's some people's path, but it's not my path anymore, because I got a glimpse
Mhm.
of what the creator is. And it is not about judgment. You're not going to be judged on the other side. That's one of the 10 common NDE lessons. There's no judgment. And if you think about it, MJ, the terms bad and good, those are earth terms. Man created those terms in order to evaluate us, as good or bad. But on the other side, there's no bad. It's all beyond greatness, brilliance. There's no bad over there. So there's no judgment. Now, you are going to have a life review. So everything that you say, think, and do here on earth, it matters. And that's why it's important to be mindful about what you say to someone and what you do to other people's all sentient beings and Mother Earth, because you will have to answer for that on the other side. It's not a judgment. It's just showing you, it's putting you in the receiver position of how they felt when you did something to them, both the good and the not so good, as we'd say here on earth. A lot of people ask me, well, how do you know you have a life review if you didn't have one? And I said, because I had 19 years where I was such a good girl. I did everything I was told. Okay. So I had not individuated. And I think my life review was so short in terms of what I did on my own. Does that make sense? What I could hold myself
Yes.
accountable
Mhm.
for, that I truly made this decision on my own volition, and be responsible for the outcome. So I think it was bypassed in order for me to understand what was part of my mission and my soul agreement now, which had to be revised, which is now to tell people not to be afraid of death, which is what I heard crystal clear on the other side by the angel that was with me. And your birth angels, your guardian angels will be with you until you pass over. So they're with you through everything. And so they were the ones that helped me when I had that near-death experience. And they, I'm sure, helped you, and they help every other person. And I
Yeah.
really do believe, MJ, when it is your time to go, you go. For whatever
Uh-huh.
reason, you've already made that contract or agreement before
That's
coming
right.
in. And so as hard as that is to believe that, a small child would choose to exit, what they are learning and the lessons that they were sharing for others to learn is all part of the evolution of your soul. And you
Okay.
have to really, it gets you have to get in a different space to really to align with this and to understand it. And it's that self-actualization part of Maslow's hierarchy of needs that you have to spend the time
Yes.
to
Mhm.
transform your own self in order to get it at a bigger level. And that's the work that a lot of us have not wanted to do, and that many don't do until they get pushed into it. And then they have that choice. Do I really want to do this transformational work, or do I just want to keep doing what I've always done and not? And then unfortunately, you're probably going to have to come back and learn it again in a different way, in a different incarnation. So, that's what I
Right?
really want people to understand is love. If I could say there's two themes on the other side, let me say it's love and oneness. We are all connected. Everything and everyone is connected. We are all one collective consciousness, and love of ourselves and of others is the most important thing. So loving yourself is a full-time job, okay? Because all of us got filters put on us that somehow limited or put conditions on how lovable we were, how worthy we were. And we have to unpack those and heal those in order to truly love ourselves no matter what. And that is hard when you come from uh, ingrained, embedded branding of family is everything. They'll always be there for you. The church is always right. How dare you criticize God or Jesus or any, and I'm not criticizing. I'm just saying, for me, I don't believe you have to go through something external to get to God, because we all are eternal sparks of God. So it's that's my experience, strength, and I hope for others. God's not doing anything to you. He's not causing the wars in Gaza. He's not causing this, conflict politically that's going on in our country right now. God is not, the reason why you do or do not do something. That's what you have to take
That's
responsibility
right.
for, your own self, and own it. And so many of us have not wanted to own it. We've wanted to deflect that responsibility to something outside of ourselves or someone outside of ourselves. I know that was a lot.
If I were to just go back a little.
Sure.
Yeah, that's okay. That was
No.
great. Go back just a little bit. When you were taken to the other side by the angel, um, what did what did you see? Did you see other people? Did you see buildings? Did you just see lights? Could you kind of open up about that a little bit?
Sure. So I saw two other angel forms, and I liken it to Casper the Friendly Ghost. So it's a form, but it's translucent. You can see through it. Okay.
Mm,
So
okay.
it's kind of like a shapeshifter kind of thing, and they were somehow they were communicating, and that's why I'm saying you can understand them through the telepathy and the vibration, the resonance. And they were saying, and I was supposed to hear this, that they, meaning people here on earth, need to ask them for help. They're always there, they're always willing to, they want to help us, but we have to initiate that. We have to ask. So that's a really important message, because the spiritual realm, there's bazillions of angels and spirit guides and ancestors. Oh, and your pets will be over there as well. That's a really cool thing, because
Oh, oh.
I was raised that pets don't have souls, okay? And that is so not true. And
Mm,
I want you to
no.
know pets are from the angelic realm. And they come here to teach us, help us to expand our love because they're truly unconditional in their love. And I want
Mm,
you to know that you will see your little fur
mm.
friends and your feathered friends on the other side, along with your deceased loved ones. They will be there. No one's going to hell. Okay. That is a man-made concept designed to keep you in fear, which it's done for a lot of people their whole lives. And for me, at least 20 years. So, no, that'd be about 40. So, it works. And they
I
just,
would say a good 15, 20 years for myself.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
it's really, and
I was scared. Yeah.
fear is such a low vibration. When you're acting out of fear, MJ, you're using that fight, flight, freeze part of your brain, that amygdala. And
That-
when you're making decisions from that, let me tell you, they're not for your highest and greatest good because you don't have clarity. You're reacting. You got to get up here in this prefrontal cortex, which is where you make your executive decision making. And that's called the sympathetic part of your brain. This is the sympathetic. You want to shift from here to here. And anytime you get triggered, you go right here and you're making decisions out of fear. So you have to learn to ground yourself. You'll have to learn to work on your vagus nerve to calm your nervous system down so that you can get to this rational place to evaluate a
Mm.
situation or a person correctly.
How did it feel to return to your body?
Ooh.
Do you remember?
um,
Yeah, you didn't mention sometimes people remember or sometimes they don't.
yeah, I just woke up and I was back in my body and they didn't let me have a mirror. And all I remember, my mother did fly out to
Oh,
Colorado Springs, and she later told me that she just tried not to break down. But she later told me after I got out of the hospital, she said, I didn't even recognize you. She said, you were so bloated and just different color, and you just didn't even look the same. And if you've ever seen anybody come out of surgery, a massive surgery, they don't look the same. I mean, it's like your
mm,
soul is left again almost, but you're just, the physical part of you is there. And I just woke up in a lot of pain. So that is the only part that I remember coming to in the hospital, coming into the pain. I was on 10 IVs. It was like they were just trying to keep me alive. And it was constant
yeah.
turnover of just, in and out of the OR
Mm.
6 times. It was always something. And that kept me in fear as well because I never knew. I thought I was getting better and then I'd have a setback. So that kept my fear and my anxiety going. So today I deal with complex PTSD as a result of that. And that's a really real thing. And you can get that. You don't have to be in the military to have complex PTSD. Any severe trauma can cause that. Okay. It doesn't even not, or even trauma. It doesn't have to be severe, but it's traumatic to you in the sense that you get stressed anytime you get triggered by anything related to that happening.
I can get really triggered. I'm really working on it,
Hmm.
but I am that type of person that will continue doing my inner work.
Yes.
I love it, and that's just what I do, but that's me. And not a lot of people are like that, right?
No,
So,
no, because it's work and you have to really look at family of origin issues because that was your role models, were your parents or your guardians. And so, you have to
mhm,
look at how you inherited generational belief systems. And it's
that's
time to start breaking some of these because they're not working for us. And you may be the one in your family that has to go, I can't do this anymore, even though
oh,
grandma did it and grandpa. Yeah. And it's not an easy role to, I mean, you know this, MJ. It's not an easy role to take on. It really isn't. Uh,
it's really not. And after my NDE, actually, I don't hear a lot of people talking too much about the after effects. We
yeah.
all hear about the NDE, but I don't hear there's after effects that actually involve even family members, husbands, wives,
I-
sisters,
yes.
all these things. We don't talk about those. We talk about the NDE, right? Of
Yeah.
course, but there is a lot of after effects and there's a lot of trauma that comes with that. And I do know that because I also have that. And I did have a lot of trauma around what happened to me as well. So I can attest to saying that this is true. And I feel it needs to be talked about a lot more.
Absolutely. And that's part of why I wrote my book, which is You Are Deathless,
Mm-hmm.
because it is my transformational journey from a near-death experience to
Mm-hmm.
a spiritually transformative experience. And it's my process of trying all these doctors and shaman. Yeah, I even went to a shaman trying to find how to help myself heal, because it's not a roadmap that's out
Mm-hmm.
there from people that have experienced an NDE, how to heal from the trauma of it. So I'm so grateful that you're bringing that up and acknowledging that, because you're right. People do not talk about it and the post-traumatic growth that comes out of that. But I have to tell you, see this initial, this credential after my name? Can you see that?
Yes. Yep.
BTDT. I have to ask you, MJ, do you know what that means? You want to give it a try? Mhm. Been there, done that.
Oh,
What? You put that as a credential? I said, heck yeah, man. I said,
why not?
I oh, take it, steal it from me. I don't care. Anybody that's experienced an NDE, to me, there's no school you go through to learn about it or to get a degree in it. It's all an experience. And each one of us has a different experience, but basically we all come out with the same lessons, except for that small fraction that have what I call distressed NDEs. But we all have the same message of light and love and beauty and oneness. And God is not judgmental and critical and all these things that many of us were raised to believe that he was. It's not even an it or a he. I mean, a gender, Um, but yeah, so
Mm-hmm.
I put that on there because I believe experience is the best teacher sometimes. I've been there, done it. I can empathize. I can sympathize with people. I can connect on a level when you've been through something like that. You have this automatic connection, just like me having an eating disorder. I went
Mm-hmm.
into the field of nutrition, became a registered dietitian, nutritionist, and focused on eating disorders because that's what I had. And my eating disorder did not turn around until 19 years later when I remembered, because I was eating all of that, stuffing all of that pain and all of that anger and all of that hurt and the betrayal that my parents blamed me because I got in the car with a drunk guy. I should have known better, is what they said.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the layers that get nuanced in trauma that you have to unpack and unravel. And you can't absorb it all at one time. That's why this is a process and why it takes time to heal. Very few people get a miracle that they're just instantly healed. I know some people do, but that's not the course of action for most of the people that I know. It is a journey,
Mm-hmm.
a very lengthy journey.
Oh, oh yeah, it can be. I have a few questions
Sure.
before we go, but I wanted to ask you, this is something that came to mind as I was doing my research, and I wanted to know if you could share a metaphor for the light that you encountered.
Yeah, I would just say that I was like an astronaut and you fill outer space with all these wonderful lights, okay? Think of it as Christmas lights or something, all twinkling, and you're
Mm-hmm.
just in a cocoon, and I think I write it in my book, and this is how I say it. Rays of brilliant white light flooded me from all sides. Streams of light
Mm.
cocooned me, wrapping every part of my being in a chrysalis of soothing waves. Instead of the pain of impact, I felt rocked and held. This was bliss. So that's how
Mm.
I describe that
That sounds
feeling
wonderful.
in my book.
So if I could ask, or if you could explain, how did your family feel about the NDE? Like, how did they react?
I would say now you have to remember you have to fast forward 19 years because I didn't have
Right.
all of that
Mm-hmm.
knowledge. So we were at different
Right.
places. I was close to 40 years old. So we were all adults by then. And they were very much of the mindset when the crash happened, just get over it, Nicole. Physically, if you're
Oh,
fine, you're going to be okay. That was kind of the mentality. They didn't understand mental, emotional, and spiritual trauma. And
mm-hmm.
so that piece has evolved for me. And so when my memory came back and I shared it with them, I do believe that they they thought I was hallucinating. They thought that I was just making this up because it went against everything we were raised to believe. And they all still
Yeah.
believe that way. All three of my siblings still
Mm.
believe that Christian doctrine, that Jesus is the only way to God. And I just am like, I love Jesus. He's a way shower, but he's not the only way to God. In fact, God is within us.
Right.
We can source God. We are
Mhm.
God. And that concept just
Mhm.
really threw them back because God is this exterior thing, man, with that image that they're all going to go and cross over and see, and you're going to be judged. And when I come back and I say that's not the way it is, they are so firm in that belief system, and they have to, because that gives them certainty. It gives them a sense of peace. And when
That's
you
right.
disrupt that at a foundational level, you fracture everything that they've known, and they go into like a dryer tumbling around, and you can't feel anything. And people don't want to live with that
Mm.
anxiety and that uncertainty,
Yeah.
uh, because if grandma believed it, mom believes it, and they're still practicing it, there's got to be something to it, right? So, um,
Yeah.
yeah, so it really didn't go over too well, to be honest with you. And we don't talk about it today. They don't want to
Oh.
address it. And my mother and dad are still alive, and they are what I would call religious addicts. And they are still trying to convert me back to the old way. And
Oh,
so
wow.
I don't have a relationship with them anymore, unfortunately, because I had to draw a boundary with
Mm.
that, because there are, for
Yes.
me, toxic. And that was really hard. Part of this
Yeah.
transformational journey is having to set boundaries with people that you love and realize who's
Yeah.
toxic. And when people can't be understanding and appreciate and talk about your viewpoint, and you're accepting and talk about theirs, when there's not that equal sharing, in my parents' minds, I should respect them, but they don't need to respect me because I'm the child, right? No, we are both equals,
Right.
and that is how we need to relate to everyone, is on an equal, respecting each other, even if we disagree. But when you can't even get to that point, you're never going to get uh, a conversation that's ever going to won't go anywhere. It's just going to be more pain for me to continually be judged and criticized for my belief systems. And it's really sad at the end of the day. Yeah, at the end of the day, it's really sad, but you can't keep
Yeah.
putting yourself in the same soup
That's
mix
right.
expecting it to taste different. It's not. It's not going to be different. You have to realize they are who they are. Their beliefs are who they are, and they're not changing. And so I have accepted that, but unfortunately it comes with a cost
Mm.
of not of just moving on with my life. And I think a lot of us go through that when you have a transformative experience and you realize your belief systems are different from your family of origin or your relatives, because that unit, we are taught that that unit has to be so tight. You have to just be there for each other and depend
That's
on each
right.
other. And when you realize that that's not the truth, it shakes your core. It really, really does. But you learn to
Mhm.
develop your own soul family that you've actually come from, and you start realizing how you connect to those with like minds and that are evolving. And that's what we're all here to do, is evolve on this with our soul's journey.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely for that. When you breathe in deeply or look up to the sky, what sense of deathlessness do you feel right then?
Woo, that's giving me angel bumps. Uh, It's just we're all one, it's that consciousness. There's a
Yeah.
very thin veil between us and the other side.
Mhm.
And when you can connect with that other side and you align with it and you know that presence, there is no fear. And that's what I want people to really understand, is when you are in fear, you're not going to truly live your life. And we want people all of us need to truly live and be present and enjoy our lives, to take
Mm.
healthy risk. But if you're in fear of death or anything else, you really are not going to truly live. And that is going to be sad at the end of the day.
Yeah, that absolutely is. And Nicole, if you could invite the audience to one act of radical shifting today, what would that be?
I think you have to radically shift judging yourself. So many of us
Love it.
judge
Yes.
ourselves. We use the word, I should have done this. MJ, I shouldn't have said that to that guy. Why didn't I say, why did I do that? Why should? Should is a very shame-based word, very low on the vibrational scale, okay? And when we shame ourselves or shame others, our children or anybody else, you should have done this. You should take that word out of your vocabulary. Catch yourself. Start being aware when you say should. I should have done this, because every time you're doing it, you're slapping yourself. You're shaming yourself. You've got to learn to catch that and quit doing that, okay? Because you are your biggest critic and biggest
Right.
tormentor in terms, in my experience. Not the narcissistic group. Okay. I'm talking about us in this tribe here. And you gotta replace that with love. You did the best that you could at that certain moment in that certain time with the knowledge base that you have. And you grow from that. You evolve from that. But awareness is the first key. And judging yourself, if you can get out of the judgment, then you can love. And when you can have love, then you can have peace. But right now, we have that judgment going on, so we're not loving ourselves, and so we're not getting to peace. But if we could put the love there and get rid of the judgment, we'd have peace. And that's what all of us ultimately want. We just want to be at peace within ourselves and within the world and with our
Mm.
our neighbors, globally as
Yeah,
well
that
as
sounds
next door.
wonderful. Absolutely. Now, I'd love to ask you what's next for you.
Well, what's next for me is I got to get my husband through open heart surgery. So I'm going to learn
Right.
to be, I've been the one having caretakers for me throughout most of my life. And now I get to put the shoe on the other foot and be of service to him. And I do want to tell people, please make sure you check in if you have any symptoms for cardiac or anything going on with you and get checked out, because my husband had absolutely no symptoms, no medications, whatever. And, went in and boom, got the news that he needed to have open heart surgery as soon as possible. So you just never know. And that's the other thing about death. Don't take it for granted that you're going to be around tomorrow. None of us
That's
ever
right.
know when we are going to pass. Okay. When you get a terminal diagnosis, yes, you get a window frame, but that doesn't guarantee that you're not going to pass it or it's going to come quicker. So be
That's
in the
right.
moment, be in the present moment, and be mindful. If
Mhm.
you didn't ever see this person again, how do you want to end and leave the conversation? And I'd hope to
Mm.
say that it was left with kindness and with love. And that to me is the higher elevated vibrational state that I like to live in. Not always easy as a human, but that's the goal for me.
I will have your book details
Thank you.
and all your other social media contacts in the description below, for anyone that wants to contact you. Okay. So, Nicole, thank you so much for sharing your truth with such courage.
You're welcome.
Your journey reminds your journey reminds us that healing isn't always linear and that love can transform even our deepest fears.
Mhm.
I am grateful for your presence and for your helping us see death as an invitation to live and love more fully. And to all that are watching, may these stories encourage you to find meaning in your own journey. And until next time, stay open, stay curious, and keep returning to the truth within you.